Good job.
All right. Now, lots to talk about tonight. First, homework 3 is due this Friday. Hopefully this is not coming as a surprise. Certainly not to Morgan. She's all over things like that. Okay, this is an important assignment since you're going to find a very similar problem on the first exam. You need to know how to do this. If you haven't connected with your study group, let me know as soon as possible. You're running out of time. Otherwise, you'll have to complete the whole problem on your own. And that's not good. Especially because there will be more group assignments. So the sooner you get with your group, the better. Isn't that right, Morgan? Good. Okay. Speaking of exam 1, it is a mere 9 days from today. You thought you were going to be spending Friday, February 14th, celebrating Valentine's Day. Nope, you're going to be taking the exam. Okay. The exam, just a quick highlight, the exam will cover the first 3 topics on the course outline. Originally, it was supposed to cover the first 4, including utility and consumer equilibrium. We're not going to get there, so don't worry about that. Okay, so the topics are the introductory stuff. Let's see if I can remember the chapter names. Well, I cannot. Okay. Supply and demand, applications of supply and demand, and elasticity that we will talk about tonight. Okay, the exam will be available from midnight Thursday, February 13th through midnight Friday, February 14th. Once you start, you'll have an hour to finish. Actually, I give you a little more time than that, so don't panic if you get to 61 minutes. To be ready for this, you need to start studying this week, with or without a small child. Okay, to help you study, because I'm always looking out for you guys, to help you study, homework 3A is now live. You should be excited. This is a new thing. Okay, homework 3A is where I ask you to come up with 1 sample exam question for each of the modules. Okay, so there are 5 modules so far that we've covered. There's 1.1, 1.2, 2.1, 2.2, and 3.1, I think it is, which is the elasticity module. Okay, so come up with a sample exam question. You can use the module quiz questions as models for the kinds of questions that I will be asking. Okay, this assignment is due before next week's Hangout, because one of the things I want to talk about in the Hangout is I want to go over the sample questions and let you know which ones are really good, in the sense that they're like the ones that I would write for you. Okay, so this is an opportunity for you to get a leg up on things. All right, tonight what I want to do is finish up our discussion of Module 2.2, specifically talking about consumer and producer surplus. That is really very easy. Even though some of you struggled with it, it's way easier than you think it is. Okay, then I want to do basically a drive-by of the highlights of the elasticity module. Okay, so let's talk about consumer and producer surplus. Okay, this is a question for you, Amy. Have you ever been shopping?
No, I don't shop. I don't spend money.
Really?
No, I'm just kidding, yes.
Okay. Emily, this one's for you. Have you ever gotten a good deal?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, that's all consumer surplus is. It's a measure of how good a deal you got on a product. Okay, so in terms of the graph, you take a demand curve, and the consumer surplus is the area under the demand curve and above the price that you paid for the product, up to the quantity that is purchased. So it is the area of a triangle. Okay, the reason for this is the demand curve shows what you think the product is worth. And so the difference between what you think it's worth and what you had to pay for it is a measure of your surplus. And that's what the consumer surplus is. Okay. If this were 4th or 5th grade, maybe 6th, I would ask you to calculate the consumer surplus, because you would know how to compute the area of a triangle. It's just 1/2 base times height. But I'm not going to do that, because I'm going to assume that you already know how to do that. And that's not really the economics part. So I won't be asking you to calculate consumer surplus. Okay, worst case, I'll ask you questions about the concept. Becca, does that make sense to you? Good. All right, producer surplus. Same thing from the business's point of view. Producer surplus is the difference between what they thought the product was worth and what you ended up paying for it. In other words, the difference between what they thought the product was worth and the price that consumers were willing to pay. Okay, so in terms of the graph, it is the area above the supply curve, since the supply curve indicates what the producer expects to get. So it's the area above the supply curve, but below the price they actually received, up to the quantity that they sold. So in this case, it is also the area of the triangle, but the triangle has the flat side on top instead of the flat side on bottom, which is the case with consumer equilibrium. Sorry, consumer surplus. Okay, so another way to think about producer surplus is it's the profit they earn beyond what they expected to earn. It's the same thing, though, really, as consumer surplus. It's how good a deal did they end up getting. Okay, and then the final kind of surplus is called, well, it has several names. It's called total surplus. It's called economic surplus. It's called social surplus. It is simply adding consumer surplus and producer surplus together. So it's how good a deal did consumers and producers get by conducting those transactions. Okay, any questions? Great stars on your wall there, by the way, next to the A and the E. Oh my gosh, I just realized something. There's an A and an E on the same wall. Could you guys be roommates? Who knew? Who knew? So did you decide to be roommates after choosing the class? You said, hey, if we're going to be taking the same class together, guess we should be roommates. Okay, perhaps I'm being a little optimistic here. Hi, Amanda. Amanda, are you there, or is it a bot?
Hi, I'm here.
You sound excited.
Super excited.
Darn.
This will be the most exciting thing I've done today.
Well, I could tell you that today was a really hard day for me, because I had back-to-back meetings in classrooms from 9 to 3 was my first breathing point. Ooh. But I can't complain about that, because Morgan has got me beat every day of the week. Okay, so I'm not even going to mention it. Forget I said that. Just like in the trials where the judge says, the jury will disregard that comment. Sure they will. Mm-hmm. All right, let's talk about elasticity. Elasticity is a really important concept if you are a practicing economist, which the last time I checked, you guys are not. Okay. It's an important concept because of what it tells us, but it is typically taught way more technically than it needs to at the introductory level. Okay, so let me just give you the Cliff Notes version. Let's see, who haven't I called on yet? Amanda, perfect. Amanda, yes. Think about a demand curve. Mm-hmm. According to a demand curve, if the business cuts the price they want to charge you, what happens to the quantity that they sell?
If they cut the price,
Yes.
they
Will they
sell
sell
more.
more or less?
They sell more.
Yeah, exactly. That's the law of demand. At a lower price, quantity demanded goes up. At a higher price, quantity demanded goes down. And that's wonderful, and that's really important. But what that doesn't tell us is how much more do people buy? Okay? It tells us that people will buy more, but we don't know whether they buy a little bit more or a lot more. And that difference matters, especially if you're in business and you're the seller. You want to know how much more people are going to buy. So elasticity is a general concept that asks how responsive is demand or supply to a change? Does it respond a little bit or does it respond a lot? Okay, think about the theory of demand. The theory of demand says quantity demanded depends on price, it depends on income, it depends on the prices of related goods, and it depends on some other things that we can't really measure. Okay, any of those things that we can measure, like price, income, the price of related goods, you can calculate an elasticity about those things. Okay, so we spend the most of our time talking about price elasticity of demand, which just means if you cut your price, how much does demand go up in percent terms? Does it go up a lot or does it go up a little? If it goes up a lot, then we say demand for that product is relatively elastic. A big response means relatively elastic. If it goes up only a little, we say it's relatively inelastic. Okay, elasticity is a property of products. It's not either or. There's a range of possibilities. It could be super elastic, it could be very elastic, it could be kind of elastic, or it could be not elastic at all, right? So there's a range of possibilities there. Okay, how do we calculate the Bye-bye. See you, Morgan.
Bye.
Thanks for coming.
You're welcome.
Okay, enjoy work. All right. So the formula for elasticity for all the elasticities is basically the same. It's the percent change in quantity divided by the percent change in whatever it is you're changing. Okay. So for example, a price elasticity of demand is the percent change in quantity demanded divided by the percent change in price. Okay. So with the price elasticity of demand, the big question is, do you get a more than proportionate response or do you get a less than proportionate response? More than proportionate means a small change in the price causes a big change in quantity demanded. That's what we mean by elastic or responsive. Okay. If it takes a large change in the price to get just a small change in quantity demanded, then we call that relatively inelastic. We call that not very responsive. Okay, in terms of the math, if the formula is percent change in quantity over percent change in price, if that ratio of percents is greater than 1, that's elastic. If it's less than 1, that's inelastic. All of those things in absolute value, of course. Okay, but you're really looking at how much additional demand do you get, okay, in percentage terms. Okay, we can talk about the income elasticity of demand, which would be the percent change in demand divided by the percent change in income. Some people are mystified by the cross price elasticity of demand. It's a funny title, but what it really means is if you change the price of one good, how does that affect demand for another good? Again, in percent terms. Okay. And then finally, we can talk about supply elasticities. The most popular one of those is the price elasticity of supply. If firms can get a higher price of X%, how much more quantity in percent will they supply? So the formula is, again, the same basic formula, percent change in quantity supplied divided by the percent change in price. That is elasticity in a nutshell, okay? I know that in the modules, they talk about two specific formulas, the point elasticity formula and the arc elasticity formula. If you were an economics major, if you were an economist, it would be important for you to know what those things are. The point elasticity is a quicker but less accurate estimate. The midpoint formula, or the arc elasticity, is more complicated but slightly more accurate. Okay, I'm not going to ask you to calculate elasticities like that. This is not a math class, it's an economics class. So the most important thing for you to learn is the concepts. What does elasticity mean? You know, if something is elastic, what does that mean? If it's inelastic, what does that mean? That's it. All right, so I know I went through that fairly quickly. What questions do you have about anything that I told you tonight, or anything that you're wondering about? Anything that you read and didn't understand? Really anything at all? What questions do you have? Well, it could mean that you're so far behind that you don't know what to ask, or you're so far ahead that you've got all this stuff cold. I'm going to assume that you're so far ahead that you have absolutely no questions at this point. And if I'm wrong, I assume you will set me straight between now and the exam. In that case, I guess we will call it a night, and I will go eat dinner. And you guys, Becca can go back to playing with her charge there. And Amy and Emily can go back to doing whatever they do in their room in the privacy of their own home. Great. Thank you very much, everybody. See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.